Revealed. How a black housekeeper's incredible insight exposed the hidden truth 20 doctors missed. Grace felt the weight of the world every time she crossed the polished floors of Westwood Luxury Hospital. As a devoted housekeeper, she wiped surfaces clean, her hands working tirelessly to support her family. Each corner of the hospital echoed with the whispers of privilege, and moments of dismissal danced around her. But she stood tall, particularly for Mia, her 10-year-old granddaughter, who carried dreams of breaking barriers as a future doctor. With every laugh and each bright smile, Mia reminded Grace of the strength passed down from her hard-working mother and grandmother. But today felt different. Today, the whispering winds of panic twisted in Grace's gut. Mia had fallen gravely ill, clinging to her bed, her radiant spirit dimmed by illness. After a dreadful visit to the emergency room, Grace's heart pounded as she watched the doctors who seemed to glimmer in white coats and high hopes pass by Mia's room, their dismissive chatter like nails on a chalkboard. A tightness gripped her chest. Grace clenched her fists, holding back the rush of emotions, but her eyes burned with unshed tears. Amid countless well-meaning medical professionals, Grace remembered her mother's lessons, whispering words of resilience that infused her spirit. "Speak up, Grace," her mother had once told her. "Your voice matters." Yet, here she stood in the fruitless space between fear and empowerment, her granddaughter's life hanging in the balance. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the hours ticking by, Grace felt her pulse race as she began to see patterns unfolding before her. It was subtle at first. A doctor scrolling through texts instead of engaging with the worried family. A dismissive chuckle shared among peers, oblivious to the worries that danced around Grace's heart. Rage bubbled within her as she witnessed Mia's symptoms overlooked like pieces of a puzzle discarded on the floor. No one cared to see the whole picture. The corridors echoed with a chilling indifference, revealing the deep chasms of socioeconomic realities Grace had known all too well. She noticed how Mia's cries for help felt lost amidst the chatter of privilege. No longer could Grace remain silent. She stepped forward, her heart racing as she confronted the arrogant doctors who dismissed her. She felt stronger with each step, fueled by the love of family rallying around her. Together, they formed a shield, a collective voice urging for recognition. Conversations sparked across the community about systemic biases, bridging divides with hard truths. Grace knew this battle was bigger than one little girl's life. It was about dignity, respect, and the voice of every overlooked person. Then came that pivotal moment, the discovery. Grace's sharp eyes caught a hidden truth that glimmered beneath the surface, a pattern in misdiagnosis casting a harsh light on the elite doctors. With trembling hands, she prepared to confront them, fueled not just by her love for Mia, but with the fire to challenge the very essence of the healthcare system. Would Grace's fury and fierce resolve change the course of her granddaughter's life? Or would it fade against the backdrop of a system that too often overlooked the worth of people like her? The stakes were undeniable, and the clock was ticking. Grace pressed forward, knowing the fight of her life had truly begun. Grace's heart raced as she gathered her courage, her footsteps echoing in the sterile corridor. She'd spent so many years cleaning these floors, yet today, they felt foreign and hostile beneath her worn shoes. This place, meant to heal, was a fortress of insensitivity, and she was done being invisible. Mia's fragile voice, barely above a whisper, cut through the din of bustling staff. "Grandma, I'm scared," she murmured, her fear winding around Grace like a cold fog. Grace rushed to her side, gripping her small hand, a lifeline in a swirling sea of uncertainty. "I'm right here, my love. We're going to fight this together." As she looked into Mia's big, trusting eyes, determination surged through Grace. The discovery she had stumbled upon became clearer in her mind. Those misdiagnoses weren't just a series of unfortunate events, they were a reflection of a troubling trend. She'd noticed how certain symptoms were brushed off, especially in patients like Mia. An unsettling thought took root. If the proper protocols could be ignored, lives could be at stake. The tension in the air thickened as she prepared for her confrontation. Gathering a mix of hospital staff in the break room had been challenging, but Grace had pulled together her community's voices. She had insisted they join her, advocates for Mia not just as an individual, but as a symbol for the others silenced by the system. As she stepped into the room, she noticed the eyes looking up, some curious, others skeptical. She cleared her throat, and her voice trembled, yet there was a steeliness behind her words. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the hard work you do, but I have to speak up for my granddaughter and many others who aren't being heard. Furtive glances danced among the group, and whispers cascaded through the small crowd. Who does she think she is? Grace felt cuts of judgment, but pressed on. Mia's symptoms have been ignored, dismissed as mere complaints. I dug deep into the records and saw a pattern over and over again. Young black girls like Mia are sent home with the wrong diagnosis because no one listens. Her words hung heavy in the air. Faces shifted, some concerned, others defensive. A doctor glared, arms crossed. You can't expect us to believe that our training would let us miss something like that. We are professionals, he stated, dismissing her findings with a wave of his hand. But Grace wasn't going to back down. What I expect is for you to acknowledge the reality. You have blind spots, and lives are at stake. I know there are good intentions here, but intentions aren't enough. A ripple of tension ignited within the room, contagious energy fueling her fire. As she continued, she recounted Mia's suffering, her small frame racked with pain while top doctors failed to see the truth. This isn't just about one little girl. This is about equity in healthcare. It's about making sure that every child receives the care they deserve, regardless of who they are or where they come from. The room shifted, a few nodding in agreement, glimmers of understanding creating a shared recognition of the issue. Suddenly, an unexpected ally spoke up. An older nurse, heavy with years of experience, stepped forward. I've been seeing this too. We can't stand by and let it continue. Grace felt her heart leap. Could this be the tipping point? But just then, the chief of staff burst in, eyebrows raised in concern. What is going on here? His eyes darted between the assembled supporters and the confronting voices. Grace's stomach tightened as she realized they were about to be challenged. Would this moment of unity last, or was it about to be squashed? Grace took a deep breath. She was ready to fight not just for Mia, but for all the ignored voices around her. What would happen next could change everything if she could just make them see. As the tension mounted, Grace's voice rang out strong. Before we end this conversation, let us hear from those who have been silent for too long. Would her stand finally shake the foundations of this place? Only time would reveal the truth. Hidden behind the dismissive smiles, the chief of staff's presence loomed large, and his scowl radiated authority. I don't think this is the place for he started, his voice low and wet with disdain. But Grace wasn't going to let him cut her off. This was her moment, and she felt every heartbeat echoing the urgency of her cause. Let them speak, she shouted, the room shaking with her intensity. The surprised faces of her colleagues snapped to attention, and the old nurse stepped forward, a wave of support shimmering behind her. I've seen too many children in pain, and we're ignoring them, the nurse said, her voice cracking but strong. I can't take it anymore. Grace's heart thumped with hope. This was their chance. As the silence stretched like a taut rope, a few others nodded, vulnerability slipping through the cracks of their tough exteriors. An respiratory therapist opened her mouth. I thought I was the only one, she admitted. But I've noticed too. We can't just let it go on. The chief of staff remained unmoved, his expression a mask of offense. This isn't constructive. You're all jeopardizing your careers. Careers mean nothing if lives are at stake. Grace shouted, feeling the swell of courage rising within her. These are the lives of our children. One by one, more voices emerged, small whispers of dissent that melded together to form a chorus. A surgical tech spoke of a patient who had been dismissed with a laugh when she complained of severe pain, but later returned with advanced symptoms. A nurse mentioned how a child's fever was overlooked until it became a much graver issue. Each story built upon the last, creating a tapestry of shared experiences in the room. As the anecdotes poured forth, the atmosphere changed. Faces that were once steely began softening, and previously skeptical glances turned to nods of acknowledgement. "She's right," shouted one young doctor, almost startling himself. "I've seen it too. It's like we're so busy and stretched. Are we really paying attention?" Grace felt a warmth rush through her, a flicker of hope suddenly igniting into a flame. This momentum could be their lifeline. "Then let us do something. Let's make those stories count. Let us create a plan to ensure this doesn't happen again," she urged, fists clenched and a spark igniting in her eyes. The chief of staff was losing control of the narrative. He snapped, "Are you suggesting we examine our entire system? That's preposterous." "Is it?" Another nurse shot back. "People are suffering every day. Don't you care? This shouldn't be political, it should be personal." Grace could see it now, the walls around their hearts were crumbling. And just when it seemed the tide was turning, the chief of staff looked around the room, his frustration palpable, and finally questioned, "What do you propose?" A moment of silence fell. It was now or never. Grace opened her mouth, ideas flooding her mind, but a thought caught her breath. Did they want to drive change? Were they ready for the sacrifices? As she prepared to outline a plan, her heart raced, the enormity of the challenge ahead weighing heavily on her shoulders. Would they rally together, or would fear suffocate their resolve? Before she could speak, a loud commotion erupted outside. A nurse rushed in, her face pale. There's a situation in the pediatric ward. Grace's stomach dropped. Was it Mia? As she turned toward the door, dread gnawed at her insides. What awaited her beyond that threshold? The chief of staff followed her gaze, his authority clashing against the rising tension. "Let us handle this properly," he said, desperation creeping back into his tone, but Grace felt a fire inside. Whatever awaited, the fight for Mia and for all the unheard voices was about to reach a boiling point. They couldn't slow down now. As she stepped forward, Grace knew this was just the beginning. What chaos awaited them in the ward, and could it become the tipping point they needed? The tension crackled in the air as Grace pushed through the door, half expecting the worst. The pediatric ward was a blur of frantic activity. Nurses hurried past, faces drawn with worry, and the faint cries of children punctuated the atmosphere like an urgent alarm. "Where's Mia?" Grace called out to a nearby nurse, her voice barely rising above the chaos. The nurse turned, her eyes wide with concern. "She's in room 3. We think she might be having a severe allergic reaction." Grace's heart dropped. Every instinct in her screamed for her to rush forward, but she kept her stride steady, forcing herself to breathe. As she entered the room, the sight almost took her breath away. Mia lay on the bed, eyes wide with fear as another nurse prepared in for. The child's skin was flushed, tiny hands trembling. "Mia?" Grace rushed to her side, taking her small hand in her own. The warmth of Mia's palm did little to quell the chill creeping up Grace's spine. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." Mia blinked up, tangling her small fingers around Grace's. "I'm scared, Grace." Tears pricked at the corners of Grace's eyes, a mix of fear and resolve churning inside her. "You're the strongest girl I know. Just hold on tight. You'll be okay." Minutes felt like hours as the medical staff flurried around her. The pediatrician soon entered, clearly weighed down by urgency. "We need to stabilize her," he urged, his face a mix of concern and focus. But Grace couldn't look away from Mia. All the earlier discussions, the protests, everything felt so trivial in the face of this urgent moment. It was all about her, about the fragile little lives that were often overlooked in the clutter of bureaucracy and protocols. Just then, the door swung open again, and the chief of staff marched in, trying to regain some sense of authority. "What's the situation here?" he asked, his tone commanding, hiding the uncertainty behind it. The pediatrician quickly updated him, and as the chief shifted from scanning the monitors to Grace's determined expression, something changed. She could see the gears turning in his mind. Did he finally grasp the gravity of their situation? "Isn't this part of the oversight we were talking about?" Grace interjected, her voice steady even as panic twisted within. "This shouldn't be happening. We could have done something. If we had listened to the signs." Just then, Mia cried out, "Gracie." As the nurse administered the medication, the little girl's body tensing as it fought against the allergen racing through her system. "It's going to help, Mia. Just breathe, sweetheart." Grace felt the collective tension of everyone in the room. Their energy was almost as palpable as the fear radiating from Mia. The chief's gaze turned sharper, his earlier dismissal now under scrutiny. Grace didn't wait for him to finish. No more dismissals. We need to make everything count, the changes we talked about. People are suffering, and it starts right here. We can't keep ignoring the signs. A moment hung in the air, charged with emotion. Would he finally understand? Would they really start pushing for change? But as she locked eyes with him, a flicker of something began to spark. Maybe, just maybe, this could be their turning point. Just then, a figure slipped into the room, a housekeeper, her uniform slightly rumpled, but her eyes sharp and intelligent. I heard about the situation, she said with a quiet confidence. I might have something crucial to share that could help. Grace felt a surge of hope as she turned to listen. What could this woman reveal? What invisible truth did she hold that could change everything? The housekeeper stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. I've been working here for over a decade. I know the patterns, the little things that everybody overlooks. She glanced at Mia, then back at Grace. The kids in this ward, they have certain similarities in their reactions. I've seen it time and time again. Grace's heart raced. What do you mean? What have you seen? There's been a spike. It started last month. Kids coming in with allergic reactions that shouldn't happen, she continued, her voice steady yet urgent. But nobody's paying attention to the foods they're eating here. The cafeteria changed suppliers. I think something's contaminated. The words hung heavy in the air. Grace felt a ripple of energy surge through her. Was it possible that the very place meant to heal was a source of danger? Mia had peanut butter for lunch just yesterday. The pediatrician chimed in, his face paling. That could explain this reaction. If the food is contaminated exactly, the housekeeper affirmed, her eyes alight with determination. I've been telling the staff, but it's like no one listens to me. I even kept notes on the incidents. Grace felt the weight of the housekeeper's insight sink in. We need those notes. Every detail could help us figure this out. The pediatrician was already opening his mouth to speak when the chief of staff interjected. This isn't the time for speculation. We need to focus on Mia and stabilize her. No. Grace shot back, her heart racing. We need to focus on all the kids. If this is happening, what about the others? This is bigger than just one child. Her voice rose, energy surging through her with each syllable. The room felt electric, charged with shared urgency. The nurses paused, momentarily drawn into the gravity of Grace's conviction. What if Mia's reaction is just the tip of the iceberg? She continued. This could affect dozens of kids. It's time to listen, to take action before it's too late. Mia squeezed Grace's hand, her small fingers trembling. Grace leaned down, meeting the girl's frightened eyes. We're going to make this right, okay? You're not alone, and neither are any of your friends here. The atmosphere shifted noticeably. The chief of staff stared at Grace, the wheels visibly turning. Maybe, just maybe, he grasped this moment's weight. Give me those notes, he finally said, his voice firm. And I'll have the cafeteria shut down immediately. We'll test everything. As nurses scrambled to gather information, the housekeeper stood tall, a calm presence against the storm. I just want these children safe. We need to be vigilant. They deserve better. Grace nodded, feeling a swell of gratitude. Thank you. You might have just saved lives today. Pooling determination overwhelmed them all. Together, they felt the strength of a shared purpose, no longer a collection of individuals, but a united front against an unseen adversary. In those tense moments, Grace felt the rush of potential change. If they could harness this energy, they might just spark a revolution in care. But as the bustle around them grew and the alarms began to settle, an unsettling thought gripped her. What if this was merely the beginning? What if worse was coming? There was a faint knock at the door, followed by a voice tinged with anxiety. We need you in the ER, right away. There's been another incident. Grace's heart dropped again, tension returning full force. What awaited them in the ER? She exchanged a worried glance with the housekeeper, both sensing an impending storm. What other truths lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? The emergency room was a flurry of movement. Nurses rushed by with grim expressions, medical equipment clattering as they scrambled to prepare for the next patient. Grace followed behind the housekeeper and pediatrician, her heart pounding with urgency. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by a growing sense of dread. Another incident? She whispered, barely able to keep the fear from her voice. Yes, the pediatrician replied, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene ahead. 2 kids from the oncology ward. Severe allergic reactions, both admitted just minutes apart. The housekeeper gripped Grace's arm tighter, her own resolve tangible as they navigated through the bustling crowd. They finally reached a curtained-off area where 2 beds sat side by side, each surrounded by anxious parents and medical staff. Grace's breath hitched when she saw the first child. A little boy, no more than 7, was struggling for air. His face was flushed, eyes wide with panic. The nurses worked fast, administering oxygen and stabilizing his condition. Next to him, a girl was crying, her small frame trembling as her mother comforted her, worry etched deep in her features. Grace felt her stomach churn. She took a step closer, ready to help. What do they need? The pediatrician stepped forward, immediately assessing the situation. We need to find out what these kids ate. We have to determine if we're dealing with something systemic. The housekeeper, still focused, turned to Grace. We must document everything. We need to take notes on their meals. I can retrace their cafeteria visits and talk to the staff. We can't let this go unanswered. But before Grace could respond, the door swung open, and a nurse rushed in, breathless. You need to come quick. Another child's just been brought in from the outpatient unit, same symptoms. Panic surged within Grace. There was no time. Go. I'll follow behind. Within moments, she found herself in the waiting room, a growing crowd of worried family members. Every face told a story of anguish and fear. It reminded her that each child was not just a patient, they were someone's whole world. Mia, I need to think about Mia, Grace murmured to herself, forcing her breathing to steady. If they didn't trace this back quickly, more lives would hang in the balance. She felt the sharp sting of tears, but a fire ignited inside her. She would fight for them. She straightened up, looking around for anyone she could enlist to help. Excuse me. She called out to a nearby nurse. Can I speak to the cafeteria staff? We need to find out what food was served last week. It could be critical. The nurse nodded, understanding igniting a spark of urgency in her voice. I can take you now, but hurry. As they hurried to the cafeteria, Grace couldn't shake the gnawing worry in her gut. Each passing moment felt like sand slipping through her fingers. They approached the kitchen area, the sound of clattering pans echoing ominously. Have they checked the food suppliers? Grace asked, her heart racing. We're working on it, the nurse replied, glancing back nervously. But just as Grace was about to respond, the kitchen staff stepped forward. We've stopped all deliveries, every shipment's under review. But we noticed something strange. The words caught in Grace's throat. What do you mean? Strange how? Before the staff member could answer, an alarm sounded loudly in the distance, sending an electric shock of dread through the room. The overhead announcements stated the ER was on lockdown. Grace's heart sank. What now? She traded another worried glance with the housekeeper, both sensing they were standing on the brink of discovering something monumental. The universe felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath. What is going on? Grace gasped, trying to process this new turmoil. Would they be able to uncover the truth before it was too late? Would they be able to protect the children who were depending on them? The lights flickered above them, casting eerie shadows across the busy kitchen. Grace felt a chill run down her spine as the alarm wailed. It was like a siren summoning chaos into their already tumultuous world. She could see the worry etched on everyone's faces, the urgency that replaced normalcy. Get everyone to stay calm, the nurse urged, rushing towards a nearby intercom. We're on lockdown, but everything's under control. Grace's mind whirled. The panic that had settled inside her began to shift into determination. We need to find out what the kids had, now more than ever, she said, her voice firm. If there is something wrong with the food, we can't let any more children suffer. Yes, let us look back at the logs, the kitchen manager said, her voice steady despite the turmoil. With a wave of her hand, she directed 2 staff members to fetch the records. Grace could only hope they would find answers. Each moment felt critical. Then, the manager's phone buzzed sharply, cutting through the mounting tension. With a frown, she answered. This is Sarah. What is happening? After a brief exchange, her face paled. What do you mean? Another report. Call the director. Grace's stomach twisted at the manager's expression. What now? She asked, dread pooling in her chest. Another child with similar symptoms. This time from the playroom. They're about to arrive. It felt like a punch to the gut. The cycle was continuing. Children were out there, unprotected. We have to act fast, Grace replied, driven by an almost primal instinct. She scanned the area, her mind racing, piecing together the steps leading up to this nightmare. What if it's not just the food? What if there is something in the air or the environment? Could it be cross-contaminated food? The kitchen staff suggested, their voices a hushed whisper. Or maybe something in the cleaning products used in the demo area. Grace hypothesized, feeling desperate for clarity. She didn't want to believe that something so insidious could be lurking in their trusted environment. As if to answer her, another nurse barged into the kitchen. They're bringing the child in right now. We need all hands on deck. Grace's heart raced. She felt the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. Let us split up. Some of us handle the kids. Others can check ingredients and products from the kitchen closely. We should come together for a plan as soon as we have anything concrete. Good idea, Sarah chimed in, her eyes sparkling with determination. They sprang into action, adrenaline coursing through Grace, nudging her to dive deeper into the mystery that surrounded them. She was struck by the realization that every minute counted. These were lives at stake, lives she couldn't just watch slip through her fingers. Time blurred as tasks became a whirlwind of activity. Kitchen staff scrambled to pull out product lists while nurses rushed to assist incoming patients. Grace felt swallowed by the urgency, every heartbeat amplifying the fear that pulsed through the air. Suddenly, a commotion erupted. A frantic voice cut through the chaos, full of fear, shouting from towards the entrance. We need help. The child won't breathe. Grace's pulse quickened. Stay strong, she whispered to herself, hopeful yet terrified. You can do this. With a swift breath, she turned toward the doorway, mentally preparing for what was to come. She instinctively stepped forward, but as she crossed the threshold, someone stopped her. Wait, a voice called out. You won't believe what we just found about the food supply. Grace's heart raced once more. What could it be? What hidden danger could escalate this nightmare to even greater heights? As she stood there, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her, dread and hope fought for dominance within her. Could they turn this tide before it was too late? Would the truth come to light in time to save one more child? Wait. The kitchen manager's voice sliced through the chaos. Grace felt her heart drop. She turned to face Sarah, who was clutching a thick folder to her chest, wide-eyed. I think we might know what is happening, Sarah stammered, glancing nervously between the door and the bustling kitchen. Without waiting for a response, she opened the folder, flipping it frantically. Look at these records from the last month. Their essay pattern. Grace leaned closer. The pages were filled with food logs, delivery dates, and supplier names. She scanned the figures, the confusion on her face only deepening. What kind of pattern? There are 3 shipments from a new supplier, and all the kids who got sick had food from those shipments. It's all here. Sarah pointed fervently. A cold wave washed over Grace. A new supplier? When did they start? I don't know, Sarah replied breathlessly, but it coincides with the first reports of illness. Panic began coursing through Grace's veins. If the food was tainted, every child who had eaten it was at risk. We have to alert everyone, she urged, urgency surging back. But just as she turned to the exit, the metallic clang of the kitchen door swung open. A group of nurses rushed in, followed by a gurney. It was flanked by 2 paramedics, their faces drawn tight with concern. On the gurney lay a small child, face pale, gasping for breath. Grace's heart shattered as she caught a glimpse of familiar brown curls. It was Janelle, a sweet girl from the kindergarten class. Instinct kicked in. Clear a path, Grace shouted, stepping aside to let them through. She couldn't let fear paralyze her now. The moment the child was inside, the frantic team went to work, checking vitals, calling out orders. Oxygen. One of the nurses called, and another quickly handed a tank over. Grace watched, helpless, as Janelle struggled, her tiny body twitching. Please be okay, Grace murmured under her breath, tears threatening to spill. This was not just a child. This was someone's daughter, sister, a little girl who laughed and played. The kitchen was alive with urgency. Clattering utensils, frantic whispers of medical jargon, and the desperation in the air solidified the fact that time was running out. Was this just one child, or was it a growing epidemic? Across the room, Sarah was bent over the folder, sifting feverishly through the logs. I found it, she shouted. The growing chaos seemed to pause as all eyes turned to her. This supplier, they have multiple health code violations. They've been flagged before. Grace felt ice settle in her stomach. And yet, they're supplying us? They shouldn't be, Sarah replied, shaking her head. The kitchen manager didn't check thoroughly. Voices grew louder as the panic escalated through the room. Each second felt like an eternity. They were all grasping at the fabric of their trust, but it was unraveling before them. Then, as if summoned by the very tension of the moment, another alarm beeped sharply, this one signaling a deeper issue. Contamination alert. Everyone, stay focused. The head nurse shouted, regaining control. We need to contain this. Everyone who has been in contact with the food needs to be checked. Grace's heart thudded in her chest. They had to take swift action to avert a greater disaster. Let us track down every shipment from that supplier, Grace suggested, standing taller, renewed determination blazing in her eyes. We need to stop this before it spreads any further. Right. Sarah agreed, visibly shaken but ready to act. Their eyes locked for a moment, a silent agreement forming between them. They had to protect every child. With the stakes higher than ever, Grace steeled herself. This wasn't just a food crisis. This was about safety, trust, and protecting the children they cared for dearly. Let us move, Grace commanded, her voice steady now. As they rushed toward the records, the reality settled in. This was only the beginning. What if they uncovered something even more sinister lurking beyond the food? With every second ticking by, the truth loomed tantalizingly close, and Grace could have sworn she could hear it whispering beneath the chaos. What secret was waiting to be unearthed, and how many more lives were on the line? Grace and Sarah plunged into the sea of paperwork. Papers shuffled, the rustling sounds amplified by the tension swirling around them. It was overwhelming. With every page turned, every shipment scrutinized, Grace felt the weight of responsibility pressing down harder. They had to find the connection, the missing piece that would unlock the truth. Here, Sarah gasped, her finger jabbing at a particular entry. This shipment came directly from the supplier with a history of violations. It was delivered just 3 days before the first illness was reported. And this number, it's the same as the last shipment. Heart racing, Grace leaned in. A list of names danced on the page, names of children who had eaten the meals made with that batch. Her stomach twisted at the thought. We have to get this information to the head nurse, Grace urged. Every child who came into contact with this food needs to be tested immediately. As they rushed toward the head nurse, the energy of the kitchen felt charged, almost electric. Staff moved with purpose, their expressions a mixture of fear and determination. Yet, amidst all the chaos, Grace felt a flicker of hope. They were still in control. They still had a chance. Excuse me, Grace called out as they approached the head nurse. The nurse turned, her brow knitted with worry. We found the shipments, Sarah blurted out, handing over the folder. There's a clear connection to the supplier with health violations. We need to alert the parents and test all the kids who consumed that food. The head nurse's eyes widened as she began skimming the details. This is huge. We can't waste any time. Just then, a small voice broke through the growing tension. Will Janelle be okay? It was a boy, no older than 6, clutching a toy truck, eyes shimmering with anxiety. Grace recognized him instantly as Janelle's little brother. She knelt down, meeting his gaze. We're doing everything we can to help her. She's strong. I know she'll fight through this. Despite her reassurances, the knot in her stomach tightened. What if their efforts came too late? Where's Janelle's mommy? He asked, a quavery helplessness in his voice. Let us find her, Grace promised, standing back up and glancing around the bustling kitchen. It felt like a scene from a chaotic movie, medics moving in and out, utensils clattering, voices lifting and falling with urgency. Sarah, still on high alert, pointed to the waiting area. She was just outside, right? They hurried through the kitchen, leaving Sarah to guide the team. Grace's heart thudded. Tom was slipping away. She spotted Janelle's mother sitting on a bench, her shoulders shaking, face buried in her hands. Excuse me, Grace said gently. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk to you about Janelle. Her head snapped up. The anguish in her eyes was raw. Is she okay? Please tell me she's okay. We're doing everything we can, but we need to discuss what happened, Grace said, her voice steady. Janelle's mother nodded. tears streaming silently down her cheeks. As Grace explained, she felt the weight of the moment. This was more than food safety. It was about lives, families, futures. The sheer thought of it made anger bloom inside her. How could a supplier with obvious violations still have access to these vulnerable children? Across the room, the medics were still working furiously. Grace's stomach churned. "We have to ensure this never happens again," she whispered to herself, determination mingling with fear. Just then, Sarah burst through the crowd, her face ashen. "Grace, you need to see this. What is it?" Grace felt her pulse quicken. "It's about the supplier. They're known for doing something much worse than just selling bad food." With that, the air crackled with tension, and Grace's world began to spin once more. What could be worse? What secrets were they about to uncover that could turn this whole disaster inside out? And at what cost? The atmosphere in the hospital was electric with tension. Grace could feel her heart pounding as she turned to follow Sarah, anxiety weaving through her thoughts like a treacherous thread. What could the supplier have done that was worse than putting bad food in front of the children? Sarah led Grace to a small conference room, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow on their faces. Grace's pulse quickened as Sarah pulled out her tablet, showing a news article. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. The headline was alarming. "Supplier under investigation for contaminated food linked to child hospitalizations." Grace's stomach knotted tightly as she read through the details. This company hadn't just supplied poor quality food. It had a track record of negligence that led to serious illnesses in children. "I can't believe they're still getting contracts," Grace muttered under her breath, the anger thrumming through her veins. "This isn't just about bad food, it's about lives. They're playing with fire, and these children are caught in the blaze." Sarah nodded in agreement. "We have the proof. If we present this to the head nurse and the hospital administration, we can take action." Just then, a nurse knocked hurriedly at the door. "They want you in the ER. There's been another incident. Get ready." A chill ran down Grace's spine. Grace turned to Sarah with fierce resolve. "We need to act, and we need to do it now. Set up a meeting with the hospital administration. If enough of us press for change, they can't ignore us." "Let us do it," Sarah said, determination in her eyes. And together they rushed back into the chaotic blur. The scene was frantic. Janelle lay on a bed, surrounded by a team of doctors working desperately to stabilize her. Grace's heart sank deeper as another child, a little boy named Lucas, was wheeled in nearby, his parents fraught with terror. Grace stepped close to Janelle's bed, clutching her hand. "You're a warrior, Janelle," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tornado of panic inside her. "You have so many people fighting for you." She felt Mia's spirit within her, driving her as the doctors worked. Whispers began to ripple through the room. "What is going on with the kids? Is it related to the cafeteria food? Did you see the article?" There it was, the spark. The parents began to realize there was more at stake than just illness. The system was failing them. Grace felt a rush of urgency. "Listen, everyone," she suddenly called out. It was a desperate move, but the room quieted. The eyes of anxious parents turned toward her. "I need your help. We're onto something big. We need to confront the administration. No child should suffer this way anymore." Parents exchanged glances of uncertainty, but then resolutely, one mother stepped forward. "You're right. We can't let them ignore us." More voices chimed in, strength swelling through the crowd, uniting the fear into purpose. With her heart racing, Grace caught the attention of a nearby nurse, who nodded encouragingly. "Let us work together to get our children the care they deserve, to make sure this never happens again." With that, the wave of solidarity surged. The parents formed a coalition around Grace, each willing to share their child's story. It was beautiful and heart-wrenching, this collective bravery. As Janelle stirred, opening her eyes, Grace whispered, "You're going to be okay." Hope flickered, and with it, quickly sprang resolve. Grace found herself buoyed by the power of her community, the love for their children amplifying their voices. They would cut through the noise, and they would be heard as they marched toward the administrative offices. Hand in hand, Grace felt the weight of years of silence being lifted. Together, they would challenge a system that had overlooked them for too long. She turned to look at Sarah, and then at the throngs of parents standing firm beside her. "This is just the beginning," she said, the weight of new purpose charging her words. "We're taking back our voices. No more silence. No more ignoring what we know is right. With resolve, rippling through them like a current, they stepped into the office, ready to demand change. They weren't just here for Janelle or Mia anymore. They were here for every child, every overlooked voice echoing through the halls of that hospital. As the doors swung open, Grace took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart full, her spirit resolute, ready to fight for the change that was long overdue. This was their moment, their stand, a beacon of hope rising through despair. Whatever lay ahead, Grace was ready. She was not just a housekeeper. She was the champion of a new dawn, the wave of change that could sweep through the prejudices long embedded in healthcare. The roar of resilience surged, and as she spoke, Grace knew they would be heard. They had come to reclaim their power, and nothing would stop them now. Now, dear friends, it's your moment to join this journey. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss this transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and let us shine a light on these vital issues. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this powerful conclusion. And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support matters, and only true fans know the importance of standing together. Let's make waves.